Mahalo, Randy. Pursuant to Governor's 19th proclamation related to the COVID emergency, Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 92, regarding public agency meetings and records is currently suspended through June 8th, 2021, to the extent necessary to enable boards to conduct business without holding meetings open to the public and to allow state agencies the ability to effectively and efficiently provide emergency relief and engage in emergency management functions. At this time, we are able to live stream the open portions of this meeting via the DHHL website. Leah, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Wu.
Here.
Commissioner Howell.
Here.
Commissioner Kapu.
Aye.
Commissioner Kaliki.
Aye.
So you can see. Yes, I see him.
Aye.
Aye. Mahalo. Agenda item C8 is deferred and will be taking up on a future agenda. Agenda item C4, the information was uploaded over the weekend. Item E1 will follow the G items later today. The public testimonies which were received by up to 4:30 p.m. on Friday were uploaded to the Dropbox. The commission will convene in executive session for approximately 30 minutes at noon. There will be a virtual community meeting tonight for West Hawaii. Please visit the DHHL website for the link to participate. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. We have the draft minutes for April 19th and 21. Are there any amendments, commission members? Patty, you're muted.
Always.
Okay. Patty, we have two screens open for you. Are you able to shut one down? We're getting feedback. Okay, so Patty, if you're able to just use the computer without the phone, if you're having microphone issues, because we're getting feedback from one or the other. All right. The other option, Patty, is if you could turn the speakers off
Okay.
on the computer or,
No, you
okay, okay.
Sounds good now.
Thank you. Now, can you unmute yourself? Great.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Okay, did you have any suggestions or amendments to the minutes?
No, I don't, Chairman. No.
Oh, okay. Seeing no, oh, there's somebody. Russell?
Hi, Chair, on page 11 of 29. The last.
Russell, could you speak closer, please, to the mic?
Can you hear me or not working?
Try again, Russell, please.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, much better.
So page 11 of 29,
Okay,
the final paragraph starts with Commissioner Kaupu agreed with Commissioner Awo. The very last line of that paragraph.
I cannot get it, Catherine. No, I cannot. I don't know how to open the screen in the.
So the last line where it says, and fasting a clean slate to the future commission. I think the word fasting, it should be passing. P-A-S-S-I-N-G.
okay, thank you.
That was it for me.
Any other commissioners? Okay. With that amendment, all those in favor of approving the minutes for the April meeting, please say, may I have a motion? May I have a
Russell.
motion to, okay, Russell,
So move. Second.
Zach. Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, okay, the motion carries. There were no public testimonies, right? Oh, we have 3 public testimonies, okay, there were. Okay, but the commission members have, all of the commission members have the public testimony. Does anyone have questions regarding public testimony? We had 3. Okay,
Chair, just a comment. So I think the public testimonies you're referring to, we just got a copy of.
yes,
So I haven't yet had a chance to review it. So I have no comments simply because I have not had a chance to review it.
we can come back, say after the J agenda. We'll
Okay,
get a chance to
thank
look at
you.
it. Then we'll move. So I hope all those that are virtually attending, take the opportunity to review the public comments, and after the J agenda, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of staff or myself. Okay, first up is Homestead Services Division, the consent agenda. Good morning, Juan.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Juan Garcia, Homestead Services Division Administrator. And we have 14 action items for you under the consent agenda, which includes 6 commission designation of leases.
Have a motion to consider the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Commissioners, is there anything that you desire to be removed from the consent agenda to be discussed separately?
Chair,
Okay, Dennis, and then,
yes, item D18, that's my third-party agreement. I have to recuse myself from that vote.
okay, that's later in the agenda. Dennis.
All right, thank you.
David?
No.
No, okay. Any other commissioners? Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved.
Oh, Chair, sorry.
Oh, stand by.
There was one that I saw in D7. Number 22. It shows that Shaylin Kaupua is transferring to Deborah Ann Kaupua, but it said relationship none. Is that correct, or is this actually a relative?
Commissioner, I'll follow up on that. I believe it's none, but I'll just confirm, see if there is in fact a more accurate relationship other than none.
Okay, and then on, just as a comment, I note on a lot of these transfers, we have the lot number, but we don't know what type of property it is. So if it's like pastoral.
If you look at the second line of each item, there's an abbreviation,
So this is-
RES or pastoral.
Okay, so this is a pastoral lease. So would this be a 10-acre or a 300-acre lot?
We don't have the size information. I can follow up on that.
Okay. I was just, because in going through this, it's difficult for me to know if this is the 10-acre Pu'ukapu or the 300 acres. I get more concerned with the 300
300.
acres than the 10, as far as improvements and stuff
Okay.
like that. Right? So, okay, thank you.
So moving forward, we'll include that information.
If we could, yeah, thanks.
We have a approved agenda, approved item.
Thank you, commissioners. I'll see you later this afternoon. Aloha.
Okay, next up, C1. For the award, Paula, and there we go.
Hello, Commissioners. Good morning. Paula Ayla with Contact and Awards Division. I have with me Kyla Bolton, who's managing the two cases that we're requesting approval on, one in Kauai High and the other one in Keaukaha. The one in Keaukaha is the Hawaii Community College home. So requesting approval of the awards for the following residence lot lease to the applicant listed below for 99 years.
Thank you, Paula. May I have a motion to consider staff recommendation?
So move. Second.
Any questions for staff? Paula?
Ayla? Yes.
Morning. Paula, is the one in Kauai High, is that a lot that was returned to the department?
It came back into our inventory to re-award. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add that the awards team is working with other divisions to get an accurate list, and in the balance of this year and next year, you'll see more of these awards coming out.
Okay, so that means we're getting them out of our inventory.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay, good.
we have the second half will be going after we finish Discovery Harbor next month. Then we'll go all into single lots.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you,
Mahalo.
Paula. Thank you,
Thank you, Kyla.
Kyla.
Thank you.
Next up is agenda item C2. We have Lehua at the table. Good morning, Lehua.
Aloha Commissioners, Lehua Kinilau Kano, Legislative Analyst. For your approval, motion is that the Hawaiian Homes Commission accept the 2021-2022 Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant Annual Housing Plan.
Okay, can I have a motion to consider staff recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
So the draft was presented to you last month. As explained, this plan is a little bit more aggressive than our last plan. We went from 8 program areas to technically now we have 13 program areas. What happened was after our draft was released, I had our HUD staff, HUD Honolulu staff, just do an initial preliminary review. It's not the formal review until it's submitted. And she gave me some feedback and had recommended one item be separated. So nothing really substantively, it just covers the area separately. You know, again, as we explained, some of the new things in this plan that wasn't in prior plans, we're trying to respond to commissioner requests, one of which is to allow for homeowner assistance. All the assistance so far has been for rental assistance. Those are the funds we received. And so with this housing plan, if it's approved by HUD, we could actually launch a program for lessees to get, whether it's mortgage assistance, utility assistance, insurance, homeowners association, that type of assistance. So that's what's in this plan that's different. We're looking at converting basically like officers' quarters in Yorktown to use it as a transitional housing. And so that will allow for sort of those beneficiaries on the spectrum that are more towards homelessness. We did enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Partners in Care. So we've identified beneficiaries that are considered homeless according to the point in time count that's done annually by the state. So looking at ways to assist those beneficiaries. In this plan that has been in prior plans, but not the most recent plan, is to allow for property acquisition, either land or existing structures. Again, a lot of that is driven by the Oahu Island plan, which has the least amount of land and the most amount of residential applications. And then finally, crime prevention for safety, security, and law enforcement, again, to try and respond to some of the concerns that the commission has expressed about, helping in these areas that we experience with our homestead communities. I will be especially looking for guidance from this commission on that, because that is a brand new activity that we haven't really done prior to this housing plan. So that in a nutshell is the housing plan.
Commissioners, questions for Lehua?
Chair, I just have a comment on the crime prevention for safety, security, and law enforcement. I appreciate the fact that we put that in there. It's very important on some of the stuff that we have going on in Kauai. And I'm sure in all the other islands, getting assistance from our local police departments and having some funding going to that so that we can try to keep people, clear of our lands that we have a difficult time trying to monitor. So I appreciate that being put into this grant.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. It's really a move relative to the current hiring freeze and the current lack of funding of positions that we have available in this next legislative budget. So it's a little bit easier to use federal funds given the budgetary constraints that we're under right now. So we're going to try and see what can be done. And I thank Lehua and the rest of the Mahazar staff for expanding or trying to expand the use of Mahazar funds.
I did already get some preliminary feedback from HUD though about wanting to ensure how these funds are going to be targeted to our low-income Native Hawaiian households, 80% and below. So we're going to do our best to identify, again, with the 2020 beneficiary studies, communities that have a higher population of low-income households. Those will definitely be factors in the deployment of these funds, and possibly utilizing other funds to complement. So it's not just Mahazar funds if we're serving the broader community and they're not all low income.
Right. Randy, before we go.
Yeah. So I too wanted to express my gratitude to the Nahasta crew, the department, in making this effort to set aside monies for this concern that continues to pop up. So we appreciate that. I'm curious to see how we might be able to use those funds, and I think that's ultimately what will come before us. But thank you for moving forward on that. Appreciate it.
Mahalo, Randy. David?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lehua. Question are we able to use Nahazda funds for like the rent to own program?
Yes, we can. There are provisions in Nahazda though that if their income drops to $0, basically it'll fully subsidize and we wouldn't ever be able to remove those families from that subsidy. So as long as we're aware of that and we ensure that we have enough funding over time to continue to subsidize that.
Yeah, and I had discussed with Chair earlier that at the Laiopua Awards, we had a lot of people that came in and had to leave because they only had, I think, 8 under 60% AMI homes available. So people qualified and they were on the list. But once the first 8 got absorbed, then they came in, but they had to leave because there was no other product for them. So if we were able to use the Mahazar somehow to subsidize that so that we could impact more of the 30 and 40% EMI families, we'd be able to get them in the homes in the order that they were on the list.
Yeah, because of the tax credit and the need to make the project pencil out, I believe that's why they shot for
Right.
as many in the 60 and higher. The challenge with if we use Mahazar is if the federal government decides that there's no money to allocate for Mahazar, then the department is going to become basically responsible for these subsidies that go on. So as long as commissioners are aware of that.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if we ever looked at what the cost of that subsidy would be over time, because it's a fluctuating scale, right? So if somebody comes in at a 30% AMI and then they get a better job or more income is coming into the household, then their actual rent would go up, right? So I'm just wondering, if we've ever taken a look at what the actual cost to the department would be, because it may be something that we may want to entertain if the cost is not that huge, just to get more of the lower income families in.
We can take a look at that.
Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lehua. So one or two questions. So when COVID started up in early 2020, this commission approved the deferral plan, for mortgage to the end of the year, and then we extended it. So just my clarification, could these funds, would these funds be available to our beneficiaries or our lessees to pay for all the deferred payments?
You want to explain about the funds that are coming?
So we do have 1.5 million that was in the American Rescue Plan that we're in the process. We've been applying for it and we expect to receive that. That 1.5 million can be used for homeowner assistance and kind of what I talked about, mortgage, to your point, deferred payments. It could be paid towards the department or to their other lenders. It could be used for, it's pretty extensive in what it allows for: insurance, homeowners association, utilities. So part of why I included it in our housing plan is because I don't think that 1.5 million is going to go very far. So I wanted to make sure that whichever one deploys first, the 1.5 million, and then we'll have Mahazar that we can use, because that's what we've been using to assist the rental assistance. We went through the 2.4 million that we received, and we went through it in like 2 months. And so needing this Mahazar funds as a back sort of once those funds are expended. So the short answer is yes, we can use it for deferred payments. We cannot use it only for DHHL, meaning the families have to apply and it has to be taken in the order in which they apply. So if they're with another lender, those also need to be considered, and then ours will be taken in order, and not as if we'll service only DHHLs first and not service other lenders.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's clarifies a little bit more. No, great. I think great work, Lehua. Yeah, I see. We'll talk a little bit more maybe in C3. That's something when we get to that, I can elaborate, share some thoughts I had. Thank you.
Okay, and Mike, we have to be careful on, there's all this need, right, for rental housing and rent deferral, but we still have to be careful because there's only a certain amount of Mahazar, and we've been getting only $2 million per year. So that we don't use it all, and then we still have folks that have need for repair loans and Mahazar loans in purchasing houses. So it's
yeah. Okay, no, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we only have so much, but what I wanted to share is that I did have a discussion with county, the housing administrator, and the county is going to be receiving funds for assistance, right? So perhaps there is somehow we can, partner up, collaborate, and maybe help more people. Just a thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions?
Yes,
Zach?
Chair. Mahalo, Chair. Mahalo, Lehua, for your presentation. I appreciate it very much. I'm just curious to know, will there be opportunities for new applicants for the Mahazar program on our island? Is that, are we looking to increase some of the requests for participating in the Mahazar program for Molokai?
So in areas that we have large environmental reviews already completed, Kalama'ula, Ho'olehua, Keaukaha, Kauai High, we have certain areas where we did a larger environmental review. Discovery Harbor is another one. All of these areas, it's easier to move families through because we've already done the overall environmental review. We can definitely take those who come on board and request assistance if they're income eligible. Outside of those, it just takes a little longer, and we just let them know up front that that process can be very lengthy because we still have to do the environmental reviews and the other requirements. So short answer is yes, we can still take in those who are interested. Again, it is easier for those areas that we have these larger environmental reviews already completed. And so Ho'olehua and Kalama'ula does have environmental. In fact, we did get recent inquiries and they fit within that scope. So we've been incorporating those inquiries that have come in.
Yeah, Lehua, thank you. The reason I asked is there was a few applicants prior to the COVID, and there were the department said that they can't continue to assist these people that wanted to be part of the program. So I just want to know if they will have an opportunity once again, and when will that be?
So I would encourage them to call our office and inquire soon. We've been taking inquiries from all the different islands. And again, those that have the larger environmental reviews completed, it's simpler because they don't have that step that they have to meet. Other than that, we go through the normal process and just check their income eligibility. And then, advise them that the environmental review and other things need to be completed. So the process can be lengthy. Sometimes through the process, they actually find another lender. That's happened in Keaukaha as an example, because the Mahazar requirements are so stringent, especially when you're talking about flood areas. Sometimes it's the sea level rise areas. And so they've actually been able to secure outside financing in the meantime while they've improved their financial situation through housing counseling. So at a minimum, we encourage families to come through and we move them through housing counseling because sometimes they can move outside of Mahazar if that process allows for it, rather than the additional requirements through Mahazar and the federal requirements. Mainly it's environmental, right? So the flooding, sea level rise, those type of issues.
So Lehua, those applicants would, if they approach me, would I refer them to the district office first?
Actually, you can just have them contact Mahazar directly here in Kapolei, because Nadine, call the main line, the main call-in number, and they'll refer them to our staff, and then we can process them through.
Okay, Lehua, thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach. Mike?
Thank you.
Just a quick question, Lehua. So I was looking through the table of contents and I was wondering, you haven't like a status of like previous plans and the completion of them from previous years? Just like a status update on.
So we usually do that in our annual performance report. That's usually due in August. So I usually come with a draft in July, and then we approve in August if that's acceptable.
Okay, so we should have one from last August then.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Lehua.
Hello, good morning. Hi, Lehua.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh.
Chair.
Yes.
Okay. Lehua, on page 9, reading page 9, the crime prevention and safety. On that activity description, when they have law enforcement measures and activities appropriate to protect residents, what is that? What does that mean, the law enforcement? Is that funding to pay for law enforcement for the homestead on illegal activity?
Some of HUD's requirements is we're not supposed to pay for resources that are supposed to be available through government functions like police through the county. However, we can look at if there's ways to support, and I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think every community is probably going to be different, whether it's supporting like neighborhood security watch type measures, whether it is like Chair is saying, hiring some personnel within DHHL to expand our enforcement division. Again, the main thing we have to be cautious with Nahasda is that we're targeting areas where we have low income households, yeah? So we'd have to be mindful of that, or at least a percentage of the fund. So if we don't use all of the Nahasda, if we're using it for everyone without regard to income, but you know, some of the measures we can do is we can GIS map all the households that have received assistance through Nahasda statewide. So we can at least identify communities where we have a larger share of Nahasda eligible households as an example. So those are our methods we can try to use to direct funds, but we just have to be aware of that. And HUD already raised that preliminarily that, you know, are we gonna use other funds with Nahasda so that we're able to assist the entire community, those who are even over income.
What about Lehua? Can you, what about abandoned vehicles in homesteads? Is there an RFP out right now from DHHL or a program initiating removal of abandoned vehicles in homesteads? Do you know anything about that?
I know not through Nahasda. I don't know if
No?
there's other.
And it's, in the homesteads, it's done on a case-by-case basis, right? So the first thing we get a complaint, we have to go to LDD and determine whether or not the street is under the jurisdiction of DHHL or whether it's under the jurisdiction of the county. If it's okay, so Stuart came up to the table.
Yeah, so is there,
Let you jump in,
is
Stuart.
there an existing RFP right now initiating on abandoned vehicles on homestead property?
Yes, we have, LDD has put out a request for quotes for removal of abandoned cars on DHHL property.
Is this for the entire state?
This is for Oahu.
Oahu
Right.
only?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Where does the funding come out from that RFP?
That one is through operating funds.
Okay. Is that just for a pilot program, 1 year? What is the contract like? 2 years? What are we looking at?
It is a multi-year contract. We started exploring doing something on an island-wide basis. We've been getting a lot more complaints in various areas. And so we had a smaller contract earlier and we thought we would be more proactive and do something island-wide and for a longer term.
Is this working with the county?
In some cases, as Chair Ayla stated, if depending on the jurisdiction on the roadways are all Hawaiian homelands. However, there are certain streets that the city does maintain. There's other streets where the city doesn't maintain. There are also other Hawaiian homelands areas that are undisposed. So it would include those areas also.
Okay, great. Okay, so when did this start, or who do we call if we have abandoned boats or abandoned vehicles on homestead? Is there a number that they should?
The best call-in would be the DHHL call center. And so they would receive the call or the complaint, and then they would forward to LDD.
Okay, okay, great.
And then we determine the road jurisdiction at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
What we don't want happen is for people to figure out that if you're gonna abandon a vehicle or a boat, do it on Hawaiian homelands because it's gonna get taken care of faster than the county. We don't want to encourage that or, let that become public knowledge. So
So,
What do you mean by that?
if it's on a county road, we'd prefer the county to do their process. Their process generally takes longer than our process. So we don't even want our homesteaders to figure out that it's easier to abandon their vehicles on DHHL land than it is on a county parcel, right? Because we do have entrepreneur homesteaders who will work on cars, let's say, and then when they're done working on a car and it has no longer any use, we don't want them to, the automatic default to become, put it out in front of a DHHL lessee's house.
Okay. But it's good to know that we have that resource, Mr. Ayla. DHHL can remove abandoned vehicles, on DHHL land because we have that problems in Nanakuli, and so that's a good resource to know that there was an RFP out for this sort of program. Thank you.
Okay. So it's not to confuse people though, that's on streets that haven't been turned over to the county yet. So first step is to determine who has jurisdiction and who's responsible.
So who will determine the jurisdiction? When we call LDD, they would determine the jurisdiction?
Yes, they have the most current lists of what streets have been turned over.
Okay.
You want to add anything, Stuart?
Yeah, I just wanted to inform the commission that we're also we'll have requests for quotes going out for trimming street trees, fixing street lights, mitigating sewer clean out issues. And we do have a number of them within Nanakuli. And so again, we go through the process of determining responsibility on those. Our goal is to get all of the infrastructure turned over to the city so that we'll minimize DHHL's expenses in this. Because, really our responsibility is to develop lots. And, a lot of our expenses are going to mitigating issues within the homestead, which is important, but it's taking a lot of resources, out of the department.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put in that little editorial comment from LDD.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Zachary?
yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you, Stuart. I just wanted to follow up. So that funding you're talking about, Stuart. Yeah, sorry, Stuart. I needed to talk to you. Thanks.
The funding is from our operating fund, and so this is some of those funds we get from the legislature, and some are trust funds. It really depends on the sometimes the nature of the work and the status of the funding within the department. So we work with Administrative Services Office to make the best decision on the use of the funds and the type of the fund.
Okay, so for island of Molokai, for example, so if like for an example, an association would like to do a project to remove abandoned vehicles, is there any type of funding for that through the district office's operational budget, or is there another budget for that?
It's my understanding that the district offices all have a repair, maintenance, and operating budget. And in fact, we will be going through the next fiscal year's budget process. And so I think that's a good time to include these kinds of expenses in each of the districts, what they face in terms of operation maintenance.
Okay, so besides the abandoned vehicles, like you mentioned about street trees, a bit trimming street trees. So if there is trees that are a health and safety issue, for example, how do we be able to have it removed?
Again, the first step would be to contact the district office, or if you're on Oahu, then the call center. Any call can go through the call center for that matter. But again, we would need to look at the location of the tree and the jurisdiction of it. On Oahu, when the subdivisions are fully maintained by the city and county, then Parks and Recreation is responsible for the tree. And if it's uplifting a sidewalk, or if it's cracking the curb or gutter, then the city would be responsible for that on streets fully maintained by the city.
Yeah, because these trees are located on Hawaiian homelands, but the street is Maui County. So, who's responsible? Is it partially Hawaiian homes, or is it Maui?
That's a great question. And in my experience, the county jurisdictions all are a little bit different in terms of what they do on those specific kinds of examples. There are streets, let's say in Anahola, where there are no street trees. This is in the recent Piilani Maikekai. There's no street trees there, but there's roads that are, and the shoulders which are maintained by the county. There's a lot of trees in homesteaded areas. So we work with Land Management Division, and sometimes depending on where it is with Homestead Services and the district offices to mitigate those trees that are, if they pose a danger.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any other questions on item C2? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Proceed to C3.
So for number C3, the motion is the Hawaiian Homes Commission accept the abbreviated Native Hawaiian Housing Plan for Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant funds made available under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
Okay, commissioners, questions on C3?
So move.
Oh, sorry, yeah. David and I think Zach.
Yes.
Second. Okay,
So commissioners, thank you for allowing this to proceed. Typically, I try to do a draft submittal and then do the acceptance the next month. But because these are American Rescue Plan Act funds and we're trying to expedite movement of these funds. So this is $5 million that came through the American Rescue Plan Act. As I explained in the submittal, I did get guidance from HUD on April 26, 2021. And so that led to preparing this abbreviated housing plan in order to disperse this $5 million. This plan needs to be completed and submitted to HUD and reviewed and approved. And so just to be clear how this one is different, and I thought this was really vital that we have this discussion, is that these funds, which were provided through our congressional delegation, was intended for, although the description is very broad, to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. Really, the intent from our congressional delegation were that these funds were to be used for low-income Native Hawaiian families So in Nahasda, Native Hawaiian is defined very broadly. It is the broader definition of Native Hawaiian. So I have it in the submittal. On page 2 on the top, these are individuals who are 1, citizens of the United States, and 2, descendants of the Aboriginal people who prior to 1778 occupied and exercised sovereignty in the area that currently constitutes the state of Hawaii. This descendancy can be demonstrated by genealogical records, verification by kupuna or kama'aina, or birth records of the state of Hawaii. So in the abbreviated housing plan guidance that we got from HUD, it explicitly states that while typically when we use Nahasda, that Native Hawaiian families who are eligible to reside on the Hawaiian homelands is the typical group that we deal with. So therefore, applicants, undivided interest lessees all meet this definition. However, for this specific funding under the American Rescue Plan, the guidance received was that the intention was the broader definition of Native Hawaiian to allow for all low-income Native Hawaiians to receive rental assistance through this $5 million. So therefore, that's what this abbreviated housing plan is proposing, that the $5 million be used for the broader definition of Native Hawaiian. I have that in the first bullet, that they qualify, that they're either unemployed or they've experienced a reduction in household income, that they're an eligible household, 80%, it doesn't exceed 80% of AMI. The rental unit is the individual's primary residence located in the state of Hawaii. I did get some guidance on that it is for residences that are located in the state of Hawaii. Again, under HUD guidelines, the maximum monthly rent may not exceed 30% of the family's monthly adjusted income, and that the maximum monthly rent for an eligible household to receive will be the greater of either the maximum monthly amount set by each county. Each county has their own requirements in terms of their cap amounts for similar emergency rental assistance programs, or the fair market rent within the zip code area. Again, this is not more than 12 months of payment for rent. An additional 6 months may be made available on a case-by-case basis, subject to availability of funds. And rental assistance should not be duplicative of any other federally funded rental assistance provided to the household. So it's very similar to the programs we've administered. The only difference is that this will allow for the broader category of Native Hawaiian as defined in Nahasda. The other thing is, once this $5 million, as opposed to the other programs that we've launched for our beneficiaries, we've utilized Nahasda when those funds have run out. Once this $5 million runs out, that's it. Unless we get additional funding from the federal government, there will be no further assistance using Nahasda through this program. So again, we'll probably have to disperse this one differently and be very careful, because again, we dispersed 2.4 million in two months using just our beneficiaries. So we may set a certain amount and open a window for so many applications. And then when those get exhausted and we've determined that we can possibly open up again, similar to what's been happening in the city and county of Honolulu, where sometimes they only go because they only have so much funds. So they're trying to estimate how much they can disperse with those amount of funds they have available. So that's the submittal as prepared for your review.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions.
Chair? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, let's go to Dennis first.
Yeah, I just had some questions, Lehua, on this $5 million program. How do we plan on advertising this, or is this be advertised on the website, or?
So
Or is
I'm
it
looking at probably doing a similar program that we have for our emergency rental assistance now, utilizing a nonprofit provider, probably most likely Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And so, we've had a really good relationship. We haven't had to publicize as much as we had to under Aloha United Way. And just to give you an idea, so Aloha United Way, when we launched the program, soon after COVID in April and May of 2020, again, because they're not necessarily a service provider that only works with our community, the response rate was significantly less. So we had 384 contacts, as opposed to when we launched with CNHA this year, in April of this year, we basically got over 1,000 inquiries. Now, granted, I think the difference is that when CNHA launched, all the county programs were not up and running. So everybody was going to CNHA, and there's probably a number of these individuals who are not Native Hawaiian. So they go through that process. We identify if they're an applicant on the wait list or they're an undivided interest lessee, and then move them through their income eligibility requirements. So of that, we've been able to assist 264 beneficiaries, and that was about $1.8 million, keeping in mind that we did assist with arrears. So some people got their full 12 months because they were behind. Some people got only a portion, and then they're going to continue to receive utilizing Mahazar. This $5 million is going to be different, because once we run out of these monies, unless Congress gives us more money, that's it for this broader category of Native Hawaiians.
So how will we have to be doing some kind of verification on whether they have any Hawaiian at all?
So under the Mahazar definition, it talks about the 3 areas. Our main primary focus, CNHA has run a program for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. They've used birth records successfully. So we will likely use similar birth records requirements. Possibly Kamehameha schools, they have an ancestry database. We could probably utilize that as the different types. That would be the first in the primary method, but there are 2 other methods as provided in the federal requirements by genealogical records and verification by kupuna or kama'aina. Again, that's an exception. We really want to make sure people have the documentation through birth records would be the preference.
Just a couple more questions. Will we be looking at trying to prioritize folks that are not on the program at this point? Or will we just, whoever signs up first, whether you've been on the program, you just continue? Or are we going to try to reach out to people that weren't on the program that maybe couldn't get on the program in prior years?
It's typically usually a first come, first serve. In the experience we've had with CNHA, we've some of the people who are on, of that 264, about 30 of them were on the Aloha United Way program. The vast majority are people who have never received assistance before, or they may have received assistance possibly through other county programs. But again, it cannot be duplicative, right? So if they're on that county program, then they stay on that county program. If they're not, then they can apply through our process, and then whichever program, that'll be the program that serve. And that's why what I'm trying to do is make it equal. I'm trying to not make it be an incentive to come to our program. So I'm trying to match the county caps. So again, whether we serve them or the county serve them. So on the neighbor islands, as I understand it, the programs are standing up as families go to them and get assistance. That's great. But we experience like the city and county of Honolulu, where they've closed the program twice. I mean, the second time they opened, I think they were open for like 17 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, and then they were exhausted. So, and then the thing with the city and county of Honolulu is that they have the preference for those who are 50% and below. So there could be people who are between 50 and 80% who haven't been serviced. And so possibly this program could help those families who are just not able to get their assistance from somewhere else.
Just one more question. I don't want to eat up all our time here, but on the 80% AMI, do you have some kind of a map or chart, especially for our homestead areas of who would qualify in this? So when we go out and talk to our homestead, I know in the farm lots, the average income, I think, is around $30,000 a year. And they would be prime folks that we want to get to, let's apply for it if you can, so on and so forth. Just try to focus on where we need to focus my energy to get folks on this program and not have them lose out, even though I know we have limited amount of dollars.
So I can forward that information to Leah to disperse to all of you. Basically, HUD puts out guidance annually identifying by your household size, what is the dollar amount that's 80% and below. So.
Yeah, that'd be
that-
great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leo.
Okay, mahalo, Dennis. David?
Thank you, Chair. So Lehua, and maybe this is a question for Ryan, but we have a mandate, right, to serve our small N Native Hawaiians. And HASDA is imposing like a second mandate to serve others as well. And so how do we, I guess, Ryan, can we do both without violating our responsibility to small N Native Hawaiians?
Ryan, did you get the question?
Yes, I can't recall the case name off the top of my head. However, there is case law that provides that the Hawaiian Homes Commission can utilize funds, and this is in the context of the Hawaiian Homelands Trust Fund, which is much more restricted in its use, but for small and Native Hawaiians. But according to that case, the Hawaiian Homes Commission can exhaust or use funds for large and Native Hawaiians, so long as there is an ancillary benefit to small and Native Hawaiians.
So in this case, what would be the ancillary benefit? If by serving the large N, we would bypass small N's?
I have to look into that.
I guess
It's, it's less a direction of HUD, Mahazar, and more of a direction of the congressional appropriation.
No, I understand that. And that's what is posing the
It's-
question.
it's really interesting because I struggled with this too, to be frank with you. And I know about the Ahuna case, and I know about the requirement to act in the best interest of them. So I was thinking through this before. And I think how I'm trying to do it, and I'm not saying that this is the best way to do it, is that we are using the HASDA fund. So we've already dispersed $2 million to AEW for our beneficiaries. We've dispersed $2.4 million that we got through the consolidated appropriations to our beneficiaries. We have another contract with CNHA, so our beneficiaries are well taken care of through our existing funds that we have. This is a separate appropriation that came in through the American Rescue Plan. That is only because of this coronavirus pandemic. I'm not getting the impression that it's going to be a normal thing, and that's why there was specific guidance on this. So that's how I'm kind of differentiating it in my mind, but I understand.
Yeah, so in other words, we're getting additional funds for our small N beneficiaries, but along with that, we also have to serve the large N population. So that would be the ancillary benefit then, right? It's because it's additional funds. Okay, thank you.
COVID related.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mike, and then Russell.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks again, Lehua. I was curious. So there's 5 million. I was wondering, did the department reach out to our Hawaii delegates in DC, or were they just thinking of us? Or how did this 5 million come to be?
So our congressional delegation was really concerned about the larger N Native Hawaiian feeling like they may be needing assistance. They know that there's funds going to each of the counties, but there was some concern about whether or not the larger N Native Hawaiians were being served. Like there was this gap because DHHL was serving its beneficiaries and then the counties, and their concern was there might be this gap. And I think it's especially valid on Oahu, not disputing the neighbor islands. I'm sure the gap is there too, but I'm using that example when they opened up and they're closing so quickly. How many of our beneficiaries are being left, or how many Native Hawaiians, the broader Native Hawaiians, are being left out because that time frame is so fast and so quick, and they could be between the 50 and 80% AMI too. So as I understand it, the concern was that there was this need that needed to be met, and frankly, some of the feedback we've received has all been positive about how DHHL has dispersed the funds. So the feeling was, since we've seemed to have a handle on it, They were inclined to continue to provide us to continue to disperse these funds to serve all Native Hawaiians.
Okay, thank you. And so you mentioned that once these funds are depleted, we're not anticipating anything additional unless there's something else declared from the federal government. But is there a timeline to utilize the 5 million, or what's any requirement on that?
So the law, under this, the American Rescue Plan Act, it does give the department till September 30, 2025. We don't anticipate, again, we're using how quickly we were able to move 2.4 million with just our beneficiaries. We're not anticipating it taking that long, but we do have that kind of time. But again, it has to be COVID impact. So
COVID
at what
related.
point will we see less and less COVID impact?
No, it's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, Russell.
Thanks, Chair. I had the same kind of questions that Commissioner Ka'apu had, and I'm trying to understand now this ancillary benefit rationale. And is it basically to have any funds at all available for our beneficiaries? We have to accept monies that have to be open to all Native Hawaiians. Is that that's the ancillary benefit? Is that some of our beneficiaries will be included in this group?
What I had intended to, frankly, Commissioner Ka'upu, was to run all our beneficiaries through Mahazar and keep them very discreet and separate, because I want to make sure they get the full, exhaust the full up to 12 months if they've been impacted and still qualify. This one, I had intended to serve the broader Native Hawaiian category, again, with the understanding that this came from Congress, that the guidance is coming from HUD, that is very clear we can serve the broader Native Hawaiian in this specific situation in response to COVID. If they do have any intention to continue this, then they'd have to make that very explicit going forward, like they did in this, versus our typical Mahazar funds. It says very clearly it's Native Hawaiian, although it's the broader definition, it's eligible to reside on Hawaiian homeland. So we're talking about our beneficiaries. In this instance, again, our congressional delegation was just concerned that the broader Native Hawaiian category who are being impacted by COVID were falling through the cracks between the counties and our program.
So, I personally think if the congressional delegation was that concerned about it, they should look at the whole blood quantum issue and revamp that. But on this particular, I'm in favor of us doing it and supporting Native Hawaiians, even those that are not beneficiaries. But to give the approval that you're seeking today, at least for me personally, I need more guidance from legal counsel. I need some comfort that we're not going to be called to task by beneficiaries at some day saying, "Hey, these monies, your guys' kuleana, your guys' responsibility is to us, not to the wider, capital N Native Hawaiians."
So I can let council address if your specific concern. I just wanted to let you know we've had preliminary conversations with staff of the congressional delegation about the successorship, the 132nd Act 80. And some of the preliminary feedback I've received is while there is a Democratic administration and Democrats have a majority, it's a slim majority. So they're still concerned about moving those issues forward, given the divisiveness of Congress. So I just wanted to advise you, they're well aware of it. It's just they're also concerned because especially like on the Senate side, one senator can just hold up a vote on a specific issue. They've talked about possibly tucking it into a larger bill and it just be one thing in there and could possibly move that way. But again, that's just the 132nd for successors. That still doesn't address your point about blood quantum in the act to begin with. So I'm just letting you know, there's been very preliminary conversations, but again, there's some concern about that, the Congress is very divided and they don't feel they have a significant amount of majority in any event. But if council does want to weigh in on your specific point.
Ryan?
I think this is largely or less of a legal question and more of a political question here, only because this is a condition of receiving and expending the HASDA funds. And I would have to talk to Lehua a little bit more. And I'll get back to you folks on just the details of this spending condition.
Separate. The definition, the part of money is not separate.
So I think Chair is just saying that while the definition comes from the HASDA, the definition of Native Hawaiian, these funds came through the American Rescue Plan Act. It's not our typical Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant funds. So again, I think Chair is just continuing to reiterate that because these came in through this separate act and it's specific to responding to, so, you know, it specifically says preventing, preparing for, and responding to coronavirus. And we got HUD guidance saying that in this specific instance, we can serve the broader Native Hawaiian for this and this only, and not impacting our NAHASDA funds. So, you know, Chair just wanted.
Sorry, I misspoke. Regardless of the funding source, if this is a condition of receipt, and maybe we can talk offline, Lehua, but if this is a condition to receiving these funds, then, you know, it's really a political question on the commission's part on whether to, you know, go and spend and satisfy that condition. But if the condition is, it's not tied to whether you receive the funds, basically saying, yeah, HUD gave the green light to spend for large and Native Hawaiians in this situation. But if that's a discretionary choice on the department side, then we have to talk offline.
I understand what you're saying, Ryan.
Let me rephrase.
Go ahead.
Is the department handcuffed to that spending condition?
I would answer frankly, yes. I was given guidance through our congressional delegation that their intention with this fund was to serve the broader Native Hawaiian. I was specifically told that that was the intent for these funds and that they did not want to see it only go to our beneficiaries, that there was 2.4 million and 1.5, and we have NAHASDA funds to use, that this funding through the American Rescue Plan Act was intended to serve the broader Native Hawaiian.
Okay, so on balance, the commission has to consider whether it would be a better benefit for the small and Native Hawaiian to take these funds with this condition. And that's really a question for the commission here.
So Ryan, I appreciate and Lehua, to characterize your answer, Ryan, that the handcuffs are political. They're not legal, right? They're not legislative.
Yes.
They're yeah, so more for us to balance when we take this action. But Lehua, when you talk about splitting, or not splitting, but focusing our beneficiaries toward the funds that already we're administering versus this new amount going through CNHA for the wider population of Native Hawaiians. If the beneficiaries contact CNHA and apply, are they turned away in favor of?
No, not at all. In fact, the funds we already have out are helping our beneficiaries. So our beneficiaries, say for example, City and County of Honolulu, they're going on a wait list now. If there are beneficiaries and CNHA is actively looking through that list, calling through that list, if there are beneficiaries, they're directing them to our program. So they're doing the best that they can to direct as many beneficiaries towards our program, the program that's already up and running and available for our beneficiaries.
And then in theory, at some point, our funds run out. If CNHA still has funds and a beneficiary is seeking assistance, they can't be turned over back to us because our funds are out, in my example. So then since CNHA processes them,
So the intention is that the funds would never be exhausted for our beneficiaries. That's why we have the separate NAHASDA programs, whereas the 5 million for this, once it runs out, it's out. We're not subsidizing this anymore, but our beneficiaries, the intent is to always have that funds available to service as many of our beneficiaries who need help.
And let's remember, all of this is reference on the COVID and emergency situation. Okay.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other question?
Yes, I just
Dave?
have a question. I guess,
Dennis?
yes, you got, am I on?
Yes, you
Yes.
are.
Okay, yeah, I guess my concern is the way we're going to administrate it is that we're looking at the HAZA funds for our beneficiaries, and we're separating this out for folks that are non-beneficiaries, large NOIs. I think I would be comfortable with saying if we did use some, and I know that they've told you that the majority of these funds, I think that's what they're talking about, majority of these funds have to be used for Native Hawaiians. Is that correct, Lehua? Or are they saying all of those funds have to be?
I was told that the 5 million was intended to serve the broader Native Hawaiian, that the feeling was we got 2.4 and we had 2.4 through the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which we've exhausted, the 1.5 million for our lessees, and that this 5 million was intended to serve the larger and Native Hawaiian, because the concern was that there wasn't necessarily a resource targeted to them. We had our beneficiaries, then we had the counties. What about this group? And that was the concern that was expressed.
But this group could have applied for the county's benefit.
Absolutely. But again, I think County of Kauai, you guys are doing really good. Some counties, they have the resource, they haven't been able to shut down, but I'm using City and County of Honolulu as an example. They opened up and they shut down in like 17 minutes. So you know, without a doubt, there's some larger Native Hawaiians who need the assistance, who haven't been able to get it. And so, and then again, we're still talking, City and County of Honolulu is still only serving the 50% and below. What about those that are over 50 but less than 80? So that's where some of the concern is coming from. But County of Kauai, as I understand it, the neighbor islands are doing fairly well in being able to serve everyone with the resources that they have. But even when you look at the aid, not only just DHHL, and I have those figures in actually in this, the first housing plan we just approved, but the numbers appear to be higher on Oahu, for example. So in the housing plan that the commission just approved on page 15, I sort of show emergency rental assistance, the percentages, right? So 66% have been assisted on Oahu, 21% on Maui, 10% on Hawaii, 3% Kauai, 0% Molokai, but we have under CNHA, we do have families now on Molokai. I don't believe we have any on Lanai that I'm aware of. So the need, the demand, even if you look at percent area median income, if you see Oahu, you know, based on our applicant report, you see the need for rental assistance is higher on Oahu, higher on Maui. That's how they've been trending. Hawaii Island is actually below what is typically their AMI. Kauai, you guys are pretty much on par. Pretty comparable to what your statistics are is the people who are seeking assistance. Molokai is a little low, but under CNHA, we are assisting families on Molokai. Very little, none that I'm aware of on Lanai. So I guess my answer to you is that some counties can sustain, but some counties, again, the ones with the larger percentages, Oahu and Maui, there are, I think, larger and Native Hawaiians who are probably impacted that haven't been able to get resources.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lou. I guess my only concern is that, we're administrating something that I don't think as a Hawaiian Homes Commission, we should be administrating because it's not our beneficiaries technically under what we are commissioned for. Hate to say this, but this should have been administrated through another organization. I won't say who it is, but that's some of the concern we have. We have a little apples and oranges going on. And I agree with Commissioner Kaupu is that I think we need to talk to legal, to our attorney about how does this happen? How do we get involved in this? And how do we tell our beneficiaries, oh, we're going to administer this program for folks that are not beneficiaries? And we're just going to get a lot of flack from, well, how come we're doing this? You haven't even completed this. And it's just trying to get it all in my mind on how do we do this? I understand the need, but I don't think it's in the right spot for us to make those, to administer it. That's all I'm saying. But I agree with I understand the need, okay? I just don't think as commissioners of this trust, we have a trust responsibility to beneficiaries. And I'm concerned that we're stepping out of that role maybe a little bit.
I totally agree. I just wanted to just say one thing. I don't disagree with you at all. I think it is important to note though, what our delegation is, they're looking for pockets of where they can stick funding, and Nahasda, which is where we primarily get to serve our beneficiaries. Just be aware that it has the broader definition of Native Hawaiian in that law. So just stating that's under the federal law. So, I mean, if that gives you at least some measure of comfort, because it is, in the Nahasda.
Yeah, so what you're saying in the Nahasda funding, even though we give it to Native Hawaiians under our beneficiaries, that it is still open to others.
So the definition in Nahasda is the broader definition, but in terms of activities, it does say, even though that broader definition, Native Hawaiians eligible to reside on Hawaiian homelands. That's how we've been serving only our beneficiaries. But again, in this guidance that came out for just this specific act and for just this purpose, it allowed for us to go beyond just those who are eligible to reside on Hawaiian homelands.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Before I go to Ryan to answer the question, and Mike and Randy, I just want to say, these folks that are 49% or 48% or 47% keep going down, they're still our families.
Sure.
Right? So, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. I just don't think it's in the right venue for us to do unless we load the book on them. But I understand when they made it clear that the HASDA does cover those large N Hawaiians under their umbrella. We just, because it said reside, we're allowed to put it into Hawaiian homes. You take out reside, it opens a whole new bag of wax here.
Yes, Dennis, and the discussion that's occurring is not any different than the discussion that occurred prior to bringing it before the commission. So
I understand. I mean,
it is Congress can do whatever they want. And I want to go to Ryan to chime in.
Lehua, do you think that there is an option for the commission to balance this situation by creating a preference for small and Native Hawaiians in the distribution of these funds?
So again, I think to your point that you made earlier, it's more of a political issue. As I understand it, that the intention for these funds was to serve all Native Hawaiians. And the only reason why I'm trying to keep them separate and run our beneficiaries through Nahasda is that I want to make sure our beneficiaries get the full extent, because I'm thinking this $5 million is going to run out. So as soon as it's done, it's gone. And then we continue to have our beneficiaries. The other thing which It's in our housing plan that the commission just approved, is housing counseling. I run all all of those who have received assistance. We ask them to go through housing counseling. We have a high rate of participation, and somebody's housing counseling isn't just for rental. Rental is definitely a part of it, helping them, but also trying to, we have a small number that are undivided interest lessees. Start getting them ready, put them on a 2-year plan for home ownership. So when this commission does award, they'll be that much further along. So we have housing counseling being targeted for all of these beneficiaries, letting them know what the department has in the queue, how they can prepare themselves. So it's a little bit more extensive for our beneficiaries. And that's why I'm trying to keep them separate through Mahazar and have these run, because most likely the housing counseling for the 5 Million American Rescue Plan Act will not be our typical housing counselor we use here with the department. It'll probably be through the service provider. So they may not get the full extent like our beneficiaries do. And so that's why I'm trying to keep the pot separate so that we have these resources targeted to our beneficiaries.
Okay, Mike, then Randy.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on what Commissioner Neves shared about, feeling that this commission and the department is not the proper venue. I mean, I agree. This money from the federal government is very much needed. I mean, for folks. It's just, I'm kind of in between there on that. I wanted to just mention, I agree with Commissioner Neves on his thoughts. And it's not like I don't want to help these other folks, but I was curious. I mean, so couldn't our delegation like maybe reach out to OHA or another entity, or is it because we're doing what? I mean, curious.
I think the main reason is because they wanted to tie it to, they're looking for pots, right? So this is a pot that they can put funds in. So Mahazar is a pot, but Mahazar identifies DHHL as the sole recipient. So if we start playing with that, now you may affect our typical Mahazar fund. So I would just proceed cautiously with that. And I would just encourage, again, what we tried to do, because Chair and I had extensive discussions, because to be frank, I had concerns. I talked to our congressional delegation staff about our concerns because I anticipated what you folks, everything that you guys are sharing, we shared. The other concern was, until I got guidance from HUD, I was very reluctant. So now that we have the guidance, I have something that I can stand on and say, okay, it's not the best scenario, but I think it protects, quote unquote, or shields the commission because we got guidance from HUD that allows it for this specific situation, and it doesn't necessarily allow it. I'd rather go that route than possibly opening up NHHBG funds to be used by other entities. Because again, when Mahazar was originally passed, OHA was in the picture, and there was discussion about whether or not there should be more than one entity. And then DHHL was designated as the sole recipient. And I will say that there are groups out there that are advocating that it should be other entities besides DHHL. So I would just proceed cautiously down that path. I'd rather go down the path. Again, it's like the path of least risk, I guess is the best way to put it, right? Because I don't want to now open up Mahazar funds to other entities. That's what I'm hoping to avoid. And so that's why this seemed to be the best way to move forward.
And Mike, I would just add that, and there was discussion of another group. I think it's a reflection of the congressional's newfound sort of confidence that the Department of Hawaiian Homelands is able to spend federal funds. So it's a reflection, I think, of a newfound confidence in our ability to be effective at dispersing funds, federal funds. So with that, I'll go to Randy and then David.
Okay. Colin, my teeth are chattering, so I'm going to try to organize my thoughts. So I appreciate all of the mana'o coming across the table from the various commissioners. But as this discussion plays out, I'm trying to get to a bottom line here. And so my question to Lehua is, well, first it's a comment. The conditions set by the federal government is intended to serve all Hawaiians, including our beneficiaries. And so the bottom line for me as we continue this discussion, if the commission decides not to approve this, then do we not risk our beneficiaries not getting anything is my question, if we walk away from this. And if that is correct, have we not also failed in our fiduciary duties to our beneficiaries? I'm just wondering if this is a package where it's all or nothing.
So I would venture to say, Randy, that it's not a package of all or nothing, but I think the consequences and how we would be viewed by the congressional delegation, especially those that are empowered to put money into the budgets, we may be looked at differently as we go forward. So that's how I'd answer that question.
Okay. Thank you.
David?
Yeah, I was just trying to think of a situation where we have beneficiaries who are not yet on the land. So like our undivided interest beneficiaries, right? If you hold an undivided interest, you can pass it on to a 25%. So the 25% is not on the homestead yet, but they may need rental assistance. And so if we're saying, no, we cannot help, those who are less than 50, we would actually be leaving out some of the undivided interest people, right? Because they technically would not qualify for that assistance because they're not on the homestead. They're not residing on the homestead.
Well, so that was one of the situations we came up when we first approved the program with AUW. We had said it was for applicants, and then I came back and I asked to broaden to include undivided interest lessees because exactly some could be 50%, some could be less than 50%.
Right.
So they actually have been serviced under the existing programs.
Oh,
that
they
we
have.
Yeah.
So, but that's still an application of where they have been serviced and they're not the 50%. So I agree with Randy. I would have more of a problem saying it's all or nothing and less of a problem, addressing it because I do see the ancillary benefit to our beneficiaries. So they would, but one question was, you would not turn them away. You would not turn our beneficiaries away if they applied for this $5 million program. Is that correct?
So what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to move all our beneficiaries towards the Mahazar funds. Because again, our housing counseling, everything is geared more towards our beneficiaries. This $5 million is just going to be about dispersing these funds. And there's going to be housing counseling, but it's not going to be tied to having if they want to be prepared to get a homestead. There's certain counseling, they're helping them on the rental side in the meantime, budgeting, those basic things, but they're even trying to set up plans to get these families ready so that when the next opportunity comes and the next, offering, they're that much further along to select.
I guess what I'm trying to hear is if there were still money left and no one else was asking for this.
Yeah, of course it would go to our beneficiaries.
Okay.
We didn't turn our beneficiaries away at all.
Okay, thank you.
I'm thinking it's going to be the opposite, so I'm just being frank.
I understand that. Just philosophically,
Okay.
I guess I want to be able to hear that there's an ancillary benefit for our
Absolutely,
beneficiaries.
we could use it for our beneficiaries. I just keep thinking we're going to run out. That's my.
Okay, thank you.
The other ancillary benefit is if you're a homesteader and your children have moved out and they're renting, they'll be able to stay away and rent longer before the nuclear option of asking to come back home in the house.
Right.
Right. So that's the other ancillary action.
So Chair.
Yes, Randy.
So I'm going to this is a reiteration, but just for my own comfort level. If we say no to this proposal, do we exclude our beneficiaries from getting any kind of benefit from what's being offered by the federal government?
Not what's in the budget now. Okay, so remember, this is a political question, right?
Right.
So I can't answer for the future, but certainly not in the money that's budgeted now.
Okay,
Nobody can take that away, but
okay.
other commissioners, other questions? Zach? We defer decision making to tomorrow.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zach. You mute.
It's on mute.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Lehua. Yeah, this $5 million for the American Rescue Plan Act. So Lehua, is there like a percentage amount of how much will go to non-beneficiaries versus beneficiaries? Is there a set amount, or how does that work, you know, as far as funding?
So again, what I was thinking was that we would disperse this for the broader category of Native Hawaiian because we already have resources for our beneficiaries available now. So, but to Commissioner Ka'apu's point, if those funds remain available and are not fully dispersed, yeah, our beneficiaries could utilize these resources too. I'm not setting a set percentage by any means. You know, again, we're trying to direct our beneficiaries to the NAHASDA because I think it has the greatest amount of assistance for those families. And then this would be for the larger end. But again, I don't have a percentage set, and if funds were available, we could definitely disperse it to our beneficiaries as well.
Yes, so you mentioned that you spoke to some of the congressional people about this proposal. So are you, I don't know if you are, but are you optimistic that there are possibilities of future funding if we do go with this particular proposal?
So what I've been told by the primary contacts was that they're very pleased with the way we've dispersed. Again, the DHHL was the first out the gate ahead of the counties. We dispersed all of the 2.4 million that came under the Consolidated Appropriations Act. I send them the reports of how many we're assisting. They're very pleased with our progress. And the word used was like using us as the model for even the counties. We're the only program that is providing housing counseling in addition to other programs. They're just giving them the assistance. We're actually providing housing counseling as well, because we're treating this that eventually this is going to go away. So prepare the families for when it's gone, that they'll be able to position themselves and make those decisions in the meantime. So they'll be that much further along. So that was the intel that was provided to me very recently. And that's what was shared in terms of our progress and what we've been doing on this.
Yeah, Lehua. So, I'm, for the record, I understand the fiduciary duty as a commissioner to, to provide benefits to our beneficiaries. That I understand. But, I also am thinking as well, that there are families, there are homesteaders that have children that may have wanting for assistance in the program that may not be 50% Hawaiian.